Want to hear the true story of a mad scientist who stole the body of a young woman from her grave and tried to bring her back to life? Or how about the true story of a psychic detective who assisted investigators in hundreds of missing persons cases across the globe? Just visit our website at hotcupcoldcasepodcast.com and subscribe to our exclusive monthly Red Eye episodes. You'll hear lots of strange stories that will keep you up at night, like the true story of a young woman who mysteriously vanished from the elevator of a haunted hotel, or the true story of a digital camera left behind by two missing hikers, which was found to contain several eerie photographs. Subscribe today at hotcupcoldcasepodcast.com and listen to all these exclusive episodes and more. Thanks for your support.
I'm itching my head.
It's fine. It's fine. It's fine. I promise.
Because I can hear it like really loud in my brain. Can you hear it in the podcast?
It's fine. I promise.
Do I stay silent until I am questioned?
Spoken to?
Yes.
No, you can jump in whenever you want.
This is 2020, Emily. Women can talk whenever they want. I'm Brant.
I'm Rachel.
And this is Hot Cup.
Cold case. What?
Oh, nothing. I just realized we can't start the episode like we normally do because this isn't our normal episode.
Well, what are we going to say? This is
why don't you guys yodel it in? All
right, let me try introducing this episode in an entirely different way.
Okay.
All right. I'm Brant, and I'm here with Rach, the cracking whip Russell.
Stop it. God, I hate you.
It's very accurate.
Babe, if you're a cracking whip, I'm your Indiana Jones.
No, stop. It's weird. Do not. No. This is a family-friendly podcast.
This is anything but a family-friendly podcast.
It's fine. Forget it.
And this episode especially, because this is our second ever Listeners Stories episode. So tonight, we're going to be sharing stories from our listeners.
Look at Emily, too. You're just, like, looking at me.
No.
Like...
I don't want eye contact. I forgot.
She's like, don't look at me.
Let me just put a bag over my head, please.
Oh, my gosh.
Well, we've got our good friend and one of the kindest and funniest people that I know, Emily, in the studio / blanket fort tonight. And she is here to not only listen to some of our stories, but to share some of her own. Do you want to say hi, Emily?
You're fine.
You guys
it's
are
not
making
live.
me nervous.
Remember
I'm
that.
starstruck.
You're so funny.
Emily is also one of our Patreon subscribers, too. Thank you for supporting our podcast, by the way.
You are welcome. And hello.
Well, before we listen to these voicemails and read through some of these emails from our listeners, let's catch up. First of all, let's talk about how our daughter is using her cuss word that she invented a lot lately.
On us.
And even though Pidgington isn't a real cuss word, the way she says it, it feels like a real cuss word.
Okay, well, let me be clear to everyone out there. Our child has never heard us cuss in front of her, ever. So I have no idea where she learned it from.
Well, she got it from Paddington Bear because he got frustrated at his friend Pidgington. And so she thinks when you yell Pidgington, it's a cuss word. And I was telling her to do something the other day, and she got really frustrated with me. She turned around and she was like, "You little Pidgington?" And even though it's not a real cuss word, I was like, "What did you say to me? How dare you?" And like, I wanted to send her to a room, and I'm like, "Is it right though? It's not even a real cuss word."
Yes, it doesn't matter what she says. It's all in how you say it.
It's the spirit with which you say it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I told her the other day she's not allowed to say it anymore. It's so rude.
We have literally had to tell our daughter, listen, Pidgington is not a nice word. Never mind the fact that it's not a real word. In our house, it's now banned.
Yes, it's so rude.
I love her.
We had EKG this week. I broke my toe. It's been a great week.
Yeah, I did go get an EKG on my heart. I thought something was wrong with my heart this week. I think it was just gas. And I'm pretty sure the doctor thinks I'm crazy. Because I came in and I was like, I think something's wrong with my heart. I think I'm dying. I Googled it and I'm pretty sure it's something called angina. And I said, am I saying that right? And she looked at me like with all the compassion in her eyes. She's like, yeah.
Just like, oh, honey.
Bless your heart.
She goes, let me just say, it would be very odd for somebody who's 30 and actually very healthy to just suddenly come down with angina. And I was like, are you sure though? Because my MD told me I'm dying. And she's like, I'm going to prescribe you 2 weeks of Prilosec for gas. So while the rest of the world is worried about COVID, I'm over here dying of gas.
You're so crazy.
Also, fall has officially begun because I am drinking my very first homebrewed pumpkin spice latte of the season tonight.
Yeah, you're a basic white guy.
I am a basic white bee when it comes to fall and pumpkin spice flavored things.
Emily's shaking her head.
She's like stroking the cup.
I didn't even realize I was stroking my mug.
Weird.
Are you trying to seduce us?
Oh, I hit the mic. I'm sorry.
I feel a lot of affection for this pumpkin spice latte right now.
Clearly.
Did I mention I love fall?
I need to take a picture of you saying that because your eyes are like all lit up and sparkly. It's so cute.
It's my season. Well, Emily, I'm going to have you save your stories for the end of the episode. And we're going to take some time to listen to some calls that came in this week, as well as read through some interesting stories that some of our listeners submitted online. And by the way, if you're listening right now and you have a story that you'd like to share, you can call our Hot Cup Cold Case voicemail at 864-MY-STORY. That's 864-697-8679. Or you can contact us at hotcupcoldcasepodcast.com and share your story with us on our website, and you just might hear it on the podcast. So the first call I'm going to play for you tonight is from one of our listeners named April. And actually, this call isn't scary at all. It's just a very sweet story about how she met her husband. But I figured we'd start off with something happy before we get into some of the stories that are much more disturbing.
Hi there, my name is April, and one of my favorite stories to tell is of me and my husband. We met in August 6th of 1997. I knocked on his door. I was doing a letter writing campaign for an environmental organization. Thought he was cute, so I asked him out. We went out that following Friday, and I knew his birthday was coming up September 13th. I asked what he wanted for his birthday, and he said, for you to be my wife. I said yes. We got married September 13th of 1997, and we celebrate our 23rd wedding anniversary next month. I love this story because it is true that young, stupid people in love can last. Have a good one. Bye.
So the first story that I'm going to share with you tonight is actually a story my cousins in Texas submitted. My cousins said that they were walking to their nearby Kroger, which is a grocery store.
I think everybody has Kroger.
Do they?
I think so.
I don't think so. No one has Winn-Dixie up here, right? Publix, Winn-Dixie, that's a southern thing.
We don't have Publix, at least in Dallas-Fort Worth.
My dad used to call Publix Publix.
Absolutely not.
That's hilarious.
So anyways, my cousins are walking to their nearby Kroger, and as they're walking, they said they noticed this white car sitting on the side of the road with its lights on. And they said it just seemed very odd. And so both my cousin and her husband immediately got suspicious, but they kept on walking. And they said at one point they turned around and noticed the car was slowly following behind them.
Oh no.
So she said they started walking faster. Well, they were by a vacant bank at the time, and they noticed the car began approaching them by driving through the old abandoned drive-through. And it was at that point that my cousin realized this car has no business being at this vacant bank. And she turned to her husband and she said, "Run. They're coming this way." So they both took off running. She said her husband began calling 911, and she noticed that the car began to back up. Well, it backed up out of the drive-thru and then kept backing up clear around the building until it disappeared out of sight.
No.
So at that point, my cousin and her husband hid behind the building because they didn't know what this car was doing. Well, then they see the car come back around, like it's looking for them. And it drove past them while they were in hiding, as if it had lost them. And keep in mind, the entire time, her husband's on the phone with 911, like describing what's happening. So they saw it eventually pull across the street and park in a Starbucks parking lot. And so they crept out of hiding and they began to try to like get closer to the Kroger, you know, instead of being trapped at this abandoned building. And that's when they saw the car finally pull into traffic and just take off. But she said they were both scared for their lives. Like scared enough to hide, scared enough to call 911.
Yeah, because that's weird. Normal people don't do that.
Yeah, if any of our listeners who are listening to this have a story about a time they were followed by someone in their car, we would love to hear it because that really is terrifying. You have no idea who's in that car, what they want.
Well, and you're walking, so it's not like you have a quick getaway.
Literally every single time I pull into our neighborhood, I'm convinced there's someone.
Usually defined as a unit of surface area equal to
Thank you,
100
Alexa.
square meters. You're welcome, Rachel.
And
How does
what
she know
else?
your name?
I don't know.
She's not supposed to know our name. She asked me the other day, what should I call you? You don't get to know my name, robot.
Our Alexa asked the same thing to Ryan, and I jumped in so fast, and I said, no, don't tell her your name, because I think I told her my name at one point. I don't want her to know that.
I'm not making this up. Rach and I were in the kitchen the other night, and Alexa asked if we wanted her to whisper to us. We were like, absolutely not.
I would have been like, absolutely.
Do you remember that time our daughter was in the airport?
Oh my God, yes. It's my
And
favorite story.
the voice on the intercom said something like, please don't leave your baggage unattended for security reasons. And my daughter yelled at the top of her lungs in a public airport, Alexa, stop!
She was getting so mad because it wouldn't stop talking. Because, you know, the spiels are long.
Well, speaking of being a child, I have a scary story from my childhood that I can share with you guys tonight.
Yes, please.
This happened when I was probably 5 or 6. It took place in broad daylight at a McDonald's playground. And I remember this specific playground, you would climb through all the tubes and they would all lead you upward to this big open chamber. You would walk through this chamber to get into the slide and then go down it. So I'm like 5 or 6 years old and I'm climbing up the tubes and I come into the chamber and there's a little girl sitting at the top of the slide, but she's not going down. She looks like she's afraid to go down or something. And so I run over to the slide and I see that little girl sitting there and I said, are you going to go down? And she just stared at me. I was like, okay, well, excuse me. And I went down the slide. When I got to the bottom of the slide, I ran back into the tubes, ran up to the top chamber, ran over to the slide, and she's still sitting there. And I said, are you going to go down? And she wouldn't say anything to me.
It's so weird.
So I said, excuse me, and went down the slide again. And I repeated this process. Well, I climbed through these tubes and I get to the top chamber. The little girl is gone. There is now a full-grown man standing in this chamber. This chamber has no windows. Like there's no way for adults who are sitting below to see what happens inside of this McDonald's play structure. Mm-hmm. I immediately, as a 5-year-old child, sense that something is wrong, but I decide to run past him and dive down the slide. But as I'm running past him, he reaches out and grabs me. And he says, hey! His grip on my arm was really tight. He jerked me close to him, and he got in my face, and he said, are you the one not letting my daughter go down the slide? Oh, no. And I said, no, sir, no, sir. And he said, you better let my daughter go down the slide or I'm going to break your arm. Do you hear me? And at that point, he twisted my arm a little bit and squeezed it tighter.
Oh
my
He goes,
God.
I'm going to break your arm. Do you understand me? I said, yes, sir. Yes, sir. And I just stood there shaking. I didn't know what to do. I was completely frozen. My heart pounding out of my chest, thinking this man was about to snap my arm like a twig. And I had no idea what he was talking about. I wasn't denying his daughter from going down the slide at all. In fact, I was asking her if she wanted to go down the slide, and she wouldn't say anything to me. Well, he finally let go of my arm and then disappeared into the tubes. And I finally just inched over to the slide and went down it. When I got to the bottom of the slide, I immediately ran to go find my mom. And I start telling her what happened. And my mom is like, what man did this? Can you point him out to me? And so we start looking around the McDonald's and I see the man with his little girl sitting across the room. And so I point him out. My mom marches straight over there and confronts this guy.
Oh, yeah. I would have gone to jail that day.
And she says, did you grab my son's arm and threaten to break it? And this man didn't even deny it. Comes right out and says, yes, ma'am, I did. I'm so sorry. I'm a pastor.
What?
Yes,
Just
like that's supposed to make it better.
As if that's supposed to like excuse his behavior or explain it. But my mom goes, what church are you the pastor of? So he told her and she was like, I just want to make sure that I never attend your church. It was terrifying.
Sounds like his daughter is a liar.
Yeah, if that would have happened to our daughter, I would have been in jail because I would have broken his arm. You would have had to come and bail me out.
So as a father of a young girl, I totally understand wanting to defend your daughter from a bully, but never would I ever grab a 5-year-old by the arm and threaten to break it.
Did you say he was in the top standing up?
Yeah,
Did you just climb through the tubes?
I guess so.
Well, up next we have a call from one of our listeners. This is Jordan's call.
Hi, this is Jordan, and I'm calling to give one of my stories. So a few years ago, back in, I think about 6 years ago, I was leaving the studio at our church that we were working at, and as I left the studio from recording an album that day, I was trying to get back to my wife real quick to run something to the house, and I was getting ready to pull out of the parking lot, and as I was pulling out, I didn't see this guy on a motorcycle coming towards me when I was getting ready to try to turn left, so I did one of those like start to drive and stop real quick, and when I stopped to kind of freak this guy out, I was nowhere close to really hitting him, but it was one of those things that I could have if I went any further. And what ensued after that was just like the craziest fit of road rage that I had ever encountered. The guy, and I happened to be calling my wife at the time too on the phone, and this guy turns around and I kind of just set down my phone because he starts yelling at me at the top of his lungs, screaming. And big dude starts, tapping his side, trying to show me where his gun is at. He threatened my life in some of the most creative ways I've ever heard. And it's been some time, so I can't remember all of them, but he threatened to kill me, my family, to follow me back to my house, never letting me rest. It was one of the first times in my life, I think the only time I can recall that I felt like somebody was going to kill me or wanted to kill me. It was a rage I'd never encountered before in my life. And so this guy just went at me and dug in and just like was, and my wife, I had left my phone on accident, and so she actually hears all this on a voice message, and she's trying to call me while this is like within a 5-minute window, and which doesn't sound long, but it is when someone's yelling at you, getting closer, revving this motorcycle up towards your car, acting like he's going to hit you and like going in circles and like screaming at you. It was next level. And the only thing I could think this whole time is that I feel like this guy is going to murder me and he doesn't know me. And I can't imagine what kind of encounters this guy has possibly had with other people. How has he not murdered somebody else when this guy is about to murder me for almost going out into the road? So that was a crazy experience. I wouldn't wish it on anybody. It's the only time that I ever felt like I might die at the hands of someone else.
I do not and will not ever understand why people think it's appropriate to be rageful at other drivers just for making a mistake.
Yeah, people are freaking crazy.
Yeah, I've made my fair share of mistakes while driving. So I really only use my horn if it's absolutely necessary to get their attention. Otherwise, I feel like honking your horn is kind of like your car shouting the F word.
I feel the same way.
It's your car's version of, hey, you Pidgeotons. I wish that our cars had two horns. I wish there was one that was like a polite, like, hey, watch out. And it would be like, arga, and then... And then there would be one that was much more angry, and it would be more like a semi-truck horn, like honk, 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 real loud.
Can you please do that again?
Okay, question though. Mm-hmm. Has anyone ever actually moved faster after you yelled at them in the car?
Never. Never.
Well, now it's time for Emily to share her stories with you.
One of them is legitimately disturbing, and the other one would only happen to her.
Okay, so I was with my children and a group of other moms at a local metro park with a beach here maybe 2 weeks ago. And this is actually the same metro park, Stony Creek, that was featured in episode 1, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, that was the episode we talked about that guy here in Michigan who tried to hide his wife's body parts at a local park that we frequent.
Yeah, it's very disturbing.
So I was with a group of other moms. All of us had multiple children there. I would say there were maybe 15 or 20 children there and several other moms around me. And we were all sort of talking together while our kids played in the water at the beach. Suddenly I looked over and realized there was a woman no more than 2 feet from my friend's children, squatting down, taking photos of her children up close of their face and nothing else, which was very alarming to me because there is no reason anyone else should have photos of my child on their phone, especially if I don't know the person.
Yeah.
And what was even scarier is it was hot outside, and she was wearing long sleeves, long pants, face mask. You could not see anything except for her eyes. And she was taking pictures of just my friend's 2 children, no one else. And she was asking the children to look at her camera while she was taking the picture.
Oh my God.
No.
Yes. Mm-mm. Yep. So I hopped up really quickly to go get the child's mother. We will call her Phoebe because I'm a big fan of Friends. While my other friend, Monica, hopped up to tell this lady it's not appropriate to ever take photos of anyone's children. By the time I got back with Phoebe, who is the mother of the children, my friend Monica had already tried to speak to this lady who would not speak to her. This woman seemed to be acting like there was a language barrier, so they couldn't really understand each other, but Monica was able to communicate that she needed the picture deleted. And at this point, we assumed that there was only one photo. And so the lady walked away. We went on with our beach day, but we watched our children a little more closely. And a few minutes later, we looked down the beach and realized that this same lady is taking more pictures of other children. At this point, we're really freaked out. We're collecting our children. We're kind of forming a little semicircle, trying to keep all of our kids in the middle because we don't know if there's anyone else involved. So my friend Monica runs up to the ranger station, asks them to call the police, while another one of my mom friends, who we can call Rachel, runs back down to this lady and speaks to her, I would say a little bit more aggressively, realizes that there is no language barrier, is able to communicate again. It is not ever appropriate to take pictures of anyone else's children. At one point I look down and Rachel is holding this lady's phone, deleting pictures, but we don't know if those pictures were being sent anywhere.
Uploaded to a cloud.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So at this point, Rachel has deleted all the photos, comes back to our group, is explaining what happened. I later found out that there were many, many photos of all of our children on this lady's phone.
Oh my God.
No,
Yes.
Not okay.
Yes. Like I said, there were probably 15 or 20 children there. And I believe she had pictures of many of them. So Monica is back talking to the police officers who have just arrived, explaining what happened. And we realize 2 more women appear out of nowhere, walking up behind this police car and Monica that are standing very close behind her. We think they were listening to the police officer. And as soon as the police officer started to move to get out of his car to go talk to the lady who was taking photos, these 2 women just darted. They bolted back in separate directions, disappeared, but I know that they were together because we later happened to see all 3 of them together. We at least know that there were 3 women involved who may have been positioned in some sort of triangle, or we don't really know.
I want to give these women the benefit of the doubt and assume that this was just an innocent accident. But number one, taking photos of someone else's children is never okay.
No,
Number
absolutely
2,
not.
doing it after someone has explicitly expressed that they do not want you doing that is not okay. And their behavior is very odd.
I mean, I can't imagine what
absolutely.
would you possibly want to do with those photos.
Right.
It's completely inappropriate. I cannot give them the benefit of the doubt. It's weird.
Yeah.
It's straight up weird.
Well, this lady was at the beach and didn't even have any children with her.
No.
So it's not like she could even claim that she was taking pictures of her kids and our kids were in the background. I mean, she was doing a photo shoot with our children.
It sounds like a trafficking scout.
That's exactly what we were thinking. And I am with you. I try to give people the benefit of the doubt. And I'm also a pretty free-range parent. I try not to worry about things like that, but I just couldn't get over it. And every other mom that was with me was also freaking out. I think that if we hadn't caught her taking photos of our children, one of our children would have been a victim.
And for those of you listening, Emily's suspicions about what these 3 women were up to really isn't that far of a stretch, because just a couple of years ago, right here in Michigan, there was a huge child trafficking ring that was uncovered.
Yeah, so a couple of years ago, 123 missing children were found in one day in a human trafficking bust just right here.
So this may just be a conspiracy theory, and I hope that's all it is. But the problem is that we know for a fact, based on what happened a couple years ago here, that there is child trafficking rings happening right here in our state. So you can never be too careful with your kids.
Well, the terrifying thing is it's not just our state. It's happening everywhere.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Well, speaking of taking inappropriate photos of other people, Emily has another story about a time a guy tried to take a photo of her, but not all of her, just one specific part of her.
Oh, gosh.
Okay, maybe that didn't come out right.
It's funny. You should just leave it. That's funny.
Should I edit that out?
I think it's funny.
It's true though, right?
It is definitely true. Sadly.
Not the part you're thinking of.
Or if this is your fetish, maybe it is. I don't know.
Okay, so first I feel like I need to address that I am married and I do not have many interactions with men that are not my husband. So this was really, really weird. So I was at Meijer one day a few months ago and I was looking for some popcorn because someone here has a popcorn fetish. Rachel asked me to get her 9 bags of barbecue popcorn. So I did. And while I was collecting my bags, I noticed this man walking down the aisle looking at me. And he comes up to me and I can tell he's sort of nervous or anxious. And all of a sudden he's asking me about my shoes. I just bought Chacos, which are like a hiking sandal. And I was very, very proud of these shoes. And they're amazingly comfortable and hideous. And so this guy is raving about my shoes and asking me what they're called, where I got them, how much they are, when I got them. I'm trying to answer his questions, and he keeps telling me that he thinks his wife would really like these shoes. He insists on making sure that I know he has a wife. So he asks me if he can take a photo of my shoes so that he can look for them for his wife. I said yes, and as I said yes, I realized he's not wearing a wedding ring, but he's talking about his wife nonstop. And that alarmed me a little bit, but I figured maybe he's just one of those guys that doesn't wear a ring. So he squats down, and I think he's going to take the picture, but instead of taking the picture, he lays down on the ground.
Like belly on the ground of this department store?
Yes, full body on the ground. His whole stomach is touching the ground so he can get a side shot of my shoes. And then he takes a top view of my shoes, and I'm thoroughly freaked out. I'm ready to get the heck out of here with my 1,200 bags of popcorn. So he gets up after taking these shots of my shoes. He says thank you, and he walks back down the aisle. I'm bolting the other way, and I look back just in time to see him turn around and come back towards me and asked me the size of my feet.
No!
To which I answered size 8 before I realized he does not need to know the size of my feet if he's going to get these for his wife.
So creepy.
Oh, no.
Poor Emily realized too late what this man was up to. And now pictures of her feet are out there, folks. They're out there on the internet somewhere.
Long story short, we're together now.
No, not really.
Oh,
This
God.
was not Emily's husband. I don't think this man was anyone's husband.
I don't think so either.
He's got pictures of your feet.
I came home and the first thing my husband said was, honestly, I'm just mad you didn't charge him for the pictures. I know. I will say I actually went home and I tried to Google size 8 women's chacos to see if I could find my own feet online.
That's so scary.
I did not find them, but I know they're out there.
Oh, my gosh.
That's really creepy. Well, if you guys are interested, I have a mugshot to end this episode with. So this story actually took place quite recently, just last week, on Sunday, August 30th,
Oh.
2020. So as the sun began to set on Los Angeles International Airport this past week, a pilot for American Airlines Flight 1997 was on approach when he reported something strange to air traffic controllers. Over the radio, the pilot said, quote, "Tower, American 1997, we just passed a guy in a jetpack."
What?
End quote. Yeah.
Jimmy Neutron, is that you?
Well, the radio tower crews responded, quote, "American 1997? Okay. Were they off to your left side or right side?" End quote. So the pilot went on to say that he was flying at an altitude of 3,000 feet when he saw a man in the sky come within about 300 yards of his aircraft. And that's when the radio tower started receiving other reports from other pilots
No.
who said, quote, "We just saw the guy passing by us in the jetpack."
No.
End quote. So air traffic controllers issued a warning to all other aircraft in the area to be on the lookout for a man in a jetpack who was encroaching on their flight paths. Well, it's illegal for anyone to fly anything in commercial airline airspace. So the FAA, or the Federal Aviation Administration, reported these sightings to the LAPD. And even the FBI has gotten involved.
That's nuts.
An investigation was launched, but so far the identity of the man in the jetpack remains a mystery. But it is entirely possible that these pilots did see a man flying a jetpack because the highest performing jetpacks known to be in existence today can reach altitudes of 12,000 feet.
No, that's insane.
Which means that people with jetpacks are now threatening commercial airline airspace.
Like, it's funny, but I think it goes back to it's just so irresponsible and selfish. Like, what if he malfunctioned and hit that plane or caused that plane to crash or something?
Right, that's why they're
Selfish.
trying to find him.
Jetpack man, if you're listening, go turn yourself in.
Well, Emily, thank you for sharing your stories with us tonight. And listeners, if you have a story that you would want us to share on the podcast, you can email it to us at hotcupcoldcasepodcast.com or call our Hot Cup Cold Case Podcast voicemail at 864-MY-STORY. That's 864-697-8679.
And even if you don't have a story, please share the podcast with your friends and encourage them to listen. The more listeners we have, the more stories we can collect and then share with you.
Also, if you are enjoying the show, please rate and review us on Apple Podcasts and other streaming services, because the more 5-star ratings and reviews we receive, the easier it becomes for people to find us in their podcast directories.
And finally, for even more things to keep you up at night, follow us on Facebook and Instagram at Hot Cup Cold Case Podcast or subscribe to our YouTube channel.
This episode of Hot Cup Cold Case was written and produced by Rach and myself, with music by Young Kool-Aid, Afternoons, and Falls. If you ever need your mug filled,
Or your spine chilled,
this is Hot Cup.
Cold Case.
whisper. I learned how after realizing that people take nap time very seriously.